right, let me get set up here. All right, so today is features. I'll share my screen here just to get us kicked off. All right. So I didn't know, Eugene, had you scheduled workshops for this week already, or do we need to discuss that here?
I have not fully scheduled this, but I have some notes on that. So why don't we start with some of the topics and keep that at the end? I'll have something ready for that.
Okay. So, in our last group of features workshops, we pretty much figured out the, pre-origins schema build artifact, and that ticket's now closed. I did create a ticket for the post-origin, but that's, I assumed was lower priority, so I left it lower. Previously, we'd also been working on the multi-client ecosystem support and the Polywrap integration testing framework. Are those still our priorities? We also have the persistence as a critical. So, we're in final review of the manifest file names. Do we want to do that final review here in the call?
Can't really seem to remember. Jordan, do you know the status of this feature?
Yeah, so with this one, I think that we we could get just some final review. Um, and yeah, so if you give me a couple minutes, excuse me, if you give me a couple minutes, I can get the document into a place where I can walk people through it, and we can get like a final review on that one today.
Okay. I'll put the link here for everybody in the in our council meeting channel. Okay. And then out of these other ones, I mean, we don't even have assignments for capability-based security or persistent node version specific caches. So while we're waiting, do we want to assign some people to this?
Sure, I'd like to be on both, actually.
Who was that speaking? I'm sorry, I'm not looking.
Yeah, Nerzel. You're.
Did I had it right? Right.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
All right, Yuri. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd like to be added as well, Jordan. Dork Jelly.
and me, Caesar.
Okay. And would you guys like to be on both of them?
Wait, what is the second one?
Persistence node specific caches.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the second one was basically for the persistence node, or at least the gateway to keep track of previous published wrappers with different wrapped version, right? Jordan, I think you added
Yeah,
this recently.
yeah. And do we even really need like a feature discussion about it, or is that something that you've just kind of been planning on implementing?
I've been planning on implementing that, but I haven't spec'd it out. I'm not sure I need. I don't know if I need feedback from the technical council on this feature, but I might do. I'm not sure. Haven't thought
Okay.
about it that far.
All right. So then, yeah, do you just want to put a hold on this, and then look at it later?
Yeah, it might be something easy to implement.
So I'll
We'll see.
I'll
Okay.
lower it down in priority then, and we could decide later
Sounds good.
if we want to
Yep,
pull
sounds
that
good.
up.
And
All
should
right.
that be assigned to Yura then? Only Yura, if I understand things correctly?
Yeah. You can remove me and Caesar from that and just add Yuri.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep. No problem.
Spec me with a feature, huh? Just kidding.
Okay. So, we've made good progress on this one. I'd like to, hope that we can get these other ones here wrapped up in, a reasonable amount of time. So, let me know when you're ready for the review, and I'll turn the screen over to you. Otherwise, we can, start working on either of these two. I think that, both of these are very early in the draft. The multi-ecosystem support has some draft here, but we haven't looked at it in, 3 months. So I don't know, if we're sort of picking these up fresh, I would think, from my perspective.
Okay. Yeah. How about this? We could start kind of looking at one of those right now if somebody's prepared to lead and talk about that, just as an initial conversation, and then I can try and fix up the manifest file names and we can get that reviewed today. But yeah, I'll just need a few more minutes.
Quick question before we move to the feature. Can you go back and show us the high priorities, please?
Sure.
I see manifest dependencies and dependencies for manifests. Is that the same one or are those different?
There's not
I
much.
think manifest dependencies was having dependencies listed in the manifest, or at least the project manifest. I'm not sure what the other one is. Who
Yeah,
added that?
I'm not sure exactly what the difference is here.
Yeah, it is. You can see duplicate of 55 in the description. Yeah, in the dependent toolkit.
In this one, it's a.
Yeah, in checkout description, it is duplicate of 55. So we can close it.
Okay, so this one can be closed.
Okay. Okay. Do any of these other high ones need to be bumped up? Do we consider them higher priority than these two that we're looking at?
Um, Sorry for interrupting. I would just like to add and to ask if we have a post origin schema build artifact issue,
Yes, we do.
and
I just added that earlier today.
amazing. Can you please assign me to that since I'm working on that and I can start a draft to see. Yeah, basically I'm working on implementation. I'm Caesar, by the way,
Okay.
and yeah, I would like to push that forward.
So should I bump it up in priority as well? I mean, I
Um,
put it as a low just because I didn't know, or no priority currently. So we probably should give it some priority here.
Yeah, so personally, I think that I would give it a high priority because we're introducing here just like a TLDR. Basically, with the plugins now, it doesn't have schema, but rather have wrap manifest. So yeah, it introduces a breaking change. So the sooner we do it and we define this, the better, in my opinion. But yeah,
Okay,
correct me if you have another opinion.
great. Okay, so who?
I
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to add on the manifest dependency because I think instead of naming it manifest dependency, it should be polywrap monorepo support or something like that, like multi-wrapper project support. And we should define the way to maybe yeah
That's
yeah
a
I
different
think
feature, I think.
yeah. So we should still have this, and I think we should have multi-wrapper project, and that that feature will be dependent on the manifest dependency. So multi-wrapper project will have manifest dependency as its feature dependency.
So would you like to boost this in priority?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think high or critical is fine. Either's fine with me. And yeah, we should add a project monorepo or something like that as a feature here.
Okay. Well, that
Yeah,
one.
and
Monorepo project or something.
Let I'm not sure if we have that already. No, I'm not seeing it. Okay, I'll add a ticket for that.
So, in addition to adding a ticket for the monorepo project support, could we also add a description for that manifest dependencies issue above?
Here, I'll
If
get
you click, yeah. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'll grab it from the roadmap when I stop sharing and bring it over. So I think that
Okay.
let's add this. So this the first step here would define the description. So we could work on that today. Um,
I can do that. I think I have a doc somewhere. I'll look at it.
so this has a very different type of description. Okay. And then this has a decent description in it, but I don't think there's a HackMD started for this yet. All right. So where do you guys want to go next? Because I think that other than the workshops, to schedule for later in the week for um, standards, the rest of this is usually treated as a workshop. So we'll do the final review of the manifest file names, and then we'll work on whichever one of these or multiple of these that you would like to work with.
Yeah, I think that maybe something easy we could do as a group is finding some of these issues that just need descriptions, and then just deciding what those descriptions look like as a group quickly.
Okay.
I feel like that's something kind of yeah.
I think that's valuable. Okay, so I'll stop my share. Oh, I have been sharing this whole time, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So who's working on the description for the uh, manifest dependencies? Do you want to share your screen?
Sure. Thank you. Just do that. Yep. Second. Let me share this doc from a while back first. I'll post it in the thread. It's relatively old. And I'll get the door in a minute, so I'll be right back.
Also, I have created an example dependency manifest, so I'll just post that as a comment point.
I'm back. I'll share screen. There's some info here about how we handle authorities. I think this was a proposal for like a local custom or something similar authority. If you want, you can read through that, but specifically this feature is for separating URIs from package identifiers and having like manifest list dependencies, any way of just listing out the dependencies in a project. So this is on a project level, not on the package level. So the build artifacts can still be the same. We can have the API where we have inside of the API imports and the URIs. That's still fine, I think. But this is from the project level, project content. So this is the current way of writing a schema. So we import some kind of object or the module into a package from some URI. So it could be like an ENS URI or an IPFS URI. And then we define the module. This is old, so it's still query. And we specify, package underscore that object, whatever. So some of the flaws of the current system, we're mixing types and package hosts. So schema should be concerned with types, at least in my opinion, and their relationships, not where package is hosted or what authority it belongs to. So when we're mirroring the schema, I don't think we should talk about what place a package is hosted at, because this could be the same package as this one, for example, or this package could live in other places. That's basically what this refers to. Hard to track URIs. In the above example, if package 3 gets updated and deployed to IPFS with a different hash, the developer needs to go through all of the schemas which reference it and update it. So if you have multiple files, so the schema is separated into multiple files and you import, you need to go through them and update. So it's really awkward to have to update your interface when you deploy the dependency on another hosting provider, basically. Though this seems like a really poor or missing lack of separation of concerns. Harder tooling to extract dependencies. So for a tool to be able to extract dependencies from the schema, it would need to actually compose it, get the final wrap info manifest, and then try to go through the API of it. So first decodes the manifest, then gets the API, and then try to extract the dependencies, instead of just maybe looking it up in either a package JSON, like a dependency JSON, or just in the project manifest. Schema gets transformed into type info, which contains types and their relationships. If dependency gets updated, so if an IPFS hash changes or an ENS version changes, then the type info changes, and even if the types the dependencies contained are the same. This is not a feature. So yeah, basically this is talking about it's again awkward to have the type info, basically the schema, the relationship of types change in any way when you just change the hosting provider or the URI. If schema 1 depends on dependency 1 hosted on ENS, so this is dependency 1. And schema 2 depends on dependency 1 hosted on IPFS. So again, same dependency but different hosting provider. They do not have the same type info. So schema 1 and schema 2, even though they depend on the same package, that one, because that package is deployed to different places, they wouldn't have the same type info. And again, that's really weird considering it's just a relationship of types, just their structure, the interface. It stays the same, but because we list the hosting URL here, it changes. And finally, just like a smart contract developer does not care about an address of a dependency contract, but only the interface, a developer writing a wrap schema should not concern himself with the package hosts. And I listed a note here. Yes, a contract can contain hard-coded addresses of dependencies, but its situation is not completely analogous to wrap schema, since a contract contains everything it needs to be deployed, schema, logic, everything, and it can only communicate on the same network. Its dependencies cannot have different authorities, for example, like a wrapper can. And the proposal, at least back then, was something like a package JSON or dependency JSON that contains dependency information. This could just be a, we could list the dependencies inside of the project manifest, for example, similar to how package JSON does it. So if we go to like a package JSON, we see name, kind of look like what we have in the project manifest, some build info, but we also see the dependencies here. So that's one option, or one of three. This is how the schema would look like, a proposed way a schema could look like. So importing an object into package one from a package name, and then you just reference it. So basically replacing the URL with like a package name or something similar. And here I listed, I think, different ways this could function. Like it could be a string, it could be without the into, so package one could be assumed. It could be into like lowercase package one. It could be this doesn't have to be a string, it could just be treated as a package name, like an identifier. We could have a lowercase, uppercase, or uppercase listing, and all versions could also support have support for aliases. For example, package X from package one, and then you can refer to it as package X. Anyways, how the dependencies could look like. So just property dependencies, let's say the manifest, we list the names for the packages. So package one, package two, package three. You could even have a different version of the same package. So for package two, if you have another version, you could say package two _ 2. So basically whatever you want to name to be. It could be even the name of the dependency. So what's listed in the manifest, that name of that package. And you specify the URL where that package is hosted. So for package one, it's on ENS. For package two, it's on, I think this was like a registry URL. For package three, it's on IPFS. And yeah, if it's a different version of the same package but hosted on a different place, you could just specify a different URL. And this was tied to the local packages, which I didn't go through up here, but basically local packages need to have their schema specified somewhere in the wrapper. So define where to specify local dependency. Oh yeah, I think this was like a similar to import redirects, I think, or maybe exactly the same as import redirects. You could redirect the package to like a local URL, basically, or an npm. And I think that's about it. Any thoughts on this?
I think this is quite cool. And maybe my only thought would be like, how can we do versioning regarding wrappers deployed to ENS or IPFS writing? Mm, yeah, like yeah, when you do ENS/org that did /package to equal to 1.0, yeah, like you said,
No. This was like example of what a registry URL would look like, since then I was working on the registry. So this would actually not use ENS but resolve to the registry contract. So it's just an example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Also, I guess, yeah, like we have for the deploy, if I recall correctly, like we have like these fetchers of different, let's say, package managers like npm and Cargo. I guess we can use it here. Makes sense. I like the approach you took here.
Thanks. Basically, this all rests on like if you have two different schemas. So this is like a thesis or like a theorem, I guess. If you have like, let's say, this schema, and then you have this schema. So package one deployed to ENS and IPFS. So why are these two schemas different? They use the same package. They use the same. This package is literally the same package. Like, why is this information necessary for the schema for the interface? Right? They should be the same, in my opinion. So if you have something like from package one, now you can actually see that they are the same, like completely same type info base. It could be a same thing we use for the build artifacts, but that's a whole separate issue potentially. Like, I don't think it's currently necessary.
One thing I would like to add is dev dependency. And this is for, like, for example, if you want to test some wrapper, then we may have other wrappers as dev dependency, but not as a build dependency or production dependency.
How would that look like? I mean,
Yeah, so
how would you use?
for example, if you have interface as a production dependency, then you won't have implementation as the production dependency, but you can have implementation as your dev dependency or testing dependency. So whenever you want to test it, you also need to have you also need to have the implementations.
I think so. That's kind of a good reason why this could be like a separate file. Although you can achieve the same thing with having it in the manifest, but I think those might not be dev dependencies, even though they technically are. Maybe a better fit would be having like, let's name this dependencies.json. You could have dependencies JSON, but you could also have dependencies.dev.json. Okay, ignore nice spelling. Fix it right now. So a whole different. So let's say we have just like one package, and you could have it like this could be fs. So on production, when you publish, for example, yarn deploy, it could use this, but when you're testing locally, it would use this. So that way you don't need to update the schema, and it's literally the same as .env or what I used in many projects when you have like a config.json. Usually you would have like a config.dev or .prod. So like you could keep this one in GitHub or something like GitHub Actions.
Yeah, why do we keep two different files? We can just have one single file because at the end of the day, this is going to be inside the wrap.info, right?
Sorry, you're a bit quiet.
Yeah, sorry. Why do we keep two different files instead of one? And you can just have one file for dependency and their dependency, just like package with JSON, and we can, yeah. So when we want to publish this on the production, it will be inside the rep.info, right? And it will only be
Yeah.
production dependency version. It won't be test dependency version. So I don't think we need to have two
If
separate files.
Yeah, understood. Same reason for why it's the same process with environments or configuration, because you can deploy it to different environments. So, for example, this is the production one. This is the testing, local one. You could have a CI one, or a better yet example. Let's say you're a wrapper developer writing wrappers for both Tezos and Ethereum. They're general purpose wrappers, but you're deploying it to different networks. You can deploy all of your wrappers to, for example, Ethereum and specify ENS domains because that's widely used on Ethereum. But for Tezos, you could use, I don't know, Tezos domains. And have like a.
Somehow you
Tezos.
and I continue to coast.
Yeah, I don't know how
You could also have.
Because we got a strong constitution. with
Where?
Grandma and Grandpa. So,
That's the main reason why this same concept exists for ENVs or concepts.
Yeah,
I
makes
have
sense.
plans.
And how will linking this with
do a
the
little bit
project manifest?
here or there. I don't know which.
Could be the same way we link the deploy manifest,
You never clog it up.
or it could be as part of the project
I worry
manifest.
about
Maybe
cooking you.
if it
She
makes
always
sense
closes
to
the bedroom door. She can't sleep in
find
the
a
bedroom door.
if it makes sense to have the same thing with
So I worry
different
about cooking you. But other than
properties
that,
inside.
I'm a little colorblind, that's why I
Polywrap
hate
YAML,
colors.
let's see,
mhm.
language, okay, that stays the same. Build,
All right.
that could be different. So, for example, you could have
What else?
inside of Polywrap
I'd ask you to go
YAML, you
somewhere
could
else,
have
but
this.
I'm worried
But
about getting
inside
COVID.
Polywrap.dev.yaml, you could have
I thought about going to the zoo,
Yeah.
but
if you have a.
the zoo's
So
not
it
the
might make
best when
sense
it's
to just
90
have
degrees
everything
out,
inside of the
Yeah.
main manifest.
right?
Though most of these, I think, are.
Sorry, babe.
It's alright.
Look at this. Yeah, most.
Still alternate.
Only this would technically
Alright.
be different on different environments.
You don't know how I'm coasting? Because I don't really go out that much. But the places I go, we're sitting
Yeah,
like
sure.
20 feet away
Could
from
be
people
either
and stuff.
the same process as the build manifest, or we could keep it as a
Not some big derby you can treat.
and then have different
Not
main
some
manifests
big
for
derby.
different environments. I think
And your
both are
mom's
okay.
boosted and everything, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
She said she wore her mask the whole time.
Does she need us to send her groceries or anything?
I asked her if she needs anything. She said no.
All right.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. We're gonna stay healthy.
Hope so.
We've been doing it so far.
Lauren's mom just went down. My mom is down.
No dads are
I
down.
can
You're the only
add
one
this
I
as a
know.
description.
Oh, that's a weird one.
Yeah.
Hey, just
I
really
guess
quick for
I'd
the
be only
interest of
dad in a
time.
lot of people's lives.
I'm ready to present the
Your
manifest
life,
refactor,
Laura's life,
so we could
Steve's
maybe
kids'
get that
lives,
final
they have
approval
dad
today.
that you see them like once
Um,
every 3 months.
Do you feel like you covered everything you wanted to cover, Yuri?
On her 18th birthday.
Yeah, I think I did. Just need to copy paste things. I can do that easily. Feel free.
Okay,
Crazy.
sweet.
Yeah.
Here, let me share my screen.
I know it.
Dabless.
I know you hate it down here.
I do.
Okay, can you see?
I'm out of here.
Okay, love you.
Love it.
Yes.
All right. So the point of this
Oh.
is
Wasn't there
to,
this morning?
if we look at the issue,
Good days.
we've talked about this in the past, but I'm just going to go through it kind of from top to bottom. Currently, Polywrap supports the following manifest types, as shown here. I propose that these are a little confusing. It's not very clear, that this one, polywrap.yaml, can be used for WebAssembly and interfaces. It's also not very clear that you need a special .plugin or .app for plugin or application projects. And then it's hard to distinguish that these are actually extensions. So build, deploy, meta, infra, that don't necessarily work for all project types. And so I propose this solution. Let me put it like this. So first off, all project manifests will have these common properties. So it'll have a format to basically just tell us what the schema is for the file. So we're still going to be using that JSON schema manifest pipeline that we have. We're going to have a project key, which is the root level information for your project. It'll have a name, and it'll have a type. And so here are the different project types. And then now continuing down, for WebAssembly, we have polywrap.yaml. And as you'll notice, for each of these project types, they all have the same name. It's all polywrap.yaml. And they all have this project root property. And then based on the type, we now know kind of like what to expect from the rest of the file. And so here, WASM assembly script, we're going to be expecting a source keyword with a schema and, oops, I need to rename that to module. So schema and module. And then for interface, we will have, again, this source root property with schema. Same for plugin, and same for application. So super simple. Very, very simple format. And I think that this will kind of make development a lot simpler. Because, yeah, you don't have to know about all of the other special things that were in the last version. So this is kind of like the first
What's up, beautiful babe?
piece of it. And then now we have to ask ourselves, how do we support project extensions?
You got a fork?
Every project type has a set of supported extensions, including but not limited to build, infra, meta, deploy, codegen.
What do you got to eat?
And so we could, add this extensions
Scoop up the rice
property.
with the pork chop, and then eat the pork chop.
And based on the project type, so for WebAssembly, we would have some supported extensions. So for WebAssembly, we support build, infra, deploy, meta. And so here, this is kind of the addendum at the bottom. So here's some notable code changes. We need to decouple the WASM and interface project types in the code base.
All right.
Because currently they're, kind of coupled together. And so we need to make them independent.
She gave you your 2 pages.
And then also another notable change is that interface versions.
Yeah.
So these format versions here.
And you were saying at the other place you just needed time to figure it out.
Any interface version only needs a major and minor.
Yeah.
Because if there's no backing implementation, then you don't need a patch. So if you think about it, there's no way to apply a patch upgrade to an interface, because there's only additions and subtractions. There's no kind of tweaks in the backend.
You figured out what?
And then future additions, we can add version pinning to the project. So if we wanted to specify a specific version of the CLI, we could add that here, as well as we could specify a specific version of the runtime that we're targeting.
All right, great.
And so polywrap.build will check
the
project.versions.polywrap version.
Yeah.
And then we could also retarget
one thing at a time
to different wrap runtimes, as stated here. So this allows us to kind of build for backwards compatibility. And then lastly, different extension manifests. So we can now support multiple manifests per extension. So inside of your root project, like polywrap.yaml file, you can have, let's say, build.
You
and then underneath
you were
build,
not providing the
you can have debug
verification.
and prod.
You were doing the verification.
And so, yeah, the being able to group extensions like this is actually pretty useful because
Yeah.
you can now add
Yeah.
different options for the
Cool.
different extension types.
So how long are you on lunch till?
Yeah. So that's pretty much
All right.
what it looks like.
So I'm gonna need to talk to
Does
these guys
this
here in
all
a
look
minute.
okay to you all? Is there any feedback?
Oh, I've been on the call since I talked to you last. Yeah. You're gonna.
I just want to.
Yeah. Since I talked to you this
So
morning.
the plugin manifest no longer
I got on
has
the call, first
a
call at 7,
module
and I've been
field.
on call after call since then.
Yeah.
I
Does
was
it?
glad I bought those snacks yesterday
Yeah.
because that was my lunch too.
Okay. Then yeah, I'll add that back in. The idea here was not to make any kind of like I guess functional changes.
No, it's not necessary.
Just to
I
make
appreciate it, but
like as few
it's not
functional
required.
changes in the code base as possible to kind of make it feel better from a developer experience
I'm
standpoint.
not.
But yeah, so I'm
eating-
not trying to change
I'm
anything
eating
too
chips and
drastic here.
pork rinds for lunch. That ain't gonna keep me skinnier.
Yeah, and I have a question regarding project. How do we switch between different production and
I'm working on it.
Hey, it's really hard to hear you, but I think you said how do we switch
just find
between
some fat
different
friends.
extension types?
Only
So
hang around with
debug or
people that
prod.
are over 250.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm thinking it would just be a command line flag. Maybe you
not right.
do something like
Just fit together perfect.
Polywrap build.
And I don't
Polywrap
smash you either
YAML,
when you were hot yesterday. I was
and
careful not to
then,
smash you.
maybe type or something like that. Then you can do debug.
Yeah.
Something like that.
No.
Maybe ENV, ENV.
ENV. Nah, I don't like that because that overloads the word. Also, you
Wave
could
or
just
something?
do maybe something like this.
We'll work on the big O
I
next.
think this is not something really common with configurations and projects like I just talked about in
Yeah.
manifest
Yeah.
dependencies.
We'll take care of that.
So, like a couple of things. Like one is
That
you
was
don't
amazing.
necessarily want or need to let everyone know there's a debug and a prod configuration.
Yeah, I'm
or
gonna
for
need to
any
talk to
other
these guys a
environment.
little bit.
That's why usually when you have configs or environments,
Figure
you
out-
just
Yeah, figure
use
out
a
what's around there.
different
You going
file
Cass or
extension.
Lamont Road?
And for example, you would just have a polywrap.yaml,
grab yourself an afternoon coffee.
polywrap.prod.yaml, and it would point to different polywrap.build.
Get yourself one of
YAML,
those
for
new
example.
iced coffees. It's
So
on.
that way, from the point of view of the project, you have your local configuration,
Exactly.
but from the point of view of, let's say, GitHub Actions,
I
you
love
have
you
a
too,
whole
sweetheart.
other. From the point of
And
view
you-
of
and you're on
production,
lunch till
if you're a
12:30?
production server, you have a
All
other.
right, I'll try to call you
So
back if I get a
the
break
only
here
change
between this
would
call and my
be
12
you
o'clock
would
call.
be able to specify in the
Okay,
CLI
love you.
what's the name of the manifest to use. So by default, it would look for Polywrap YAML, but you could pass in a manifest argument and say, hey, look at Polywrap prod YAML.
Yep, yeah, that makes sense. The approach that I was thinking of is like if you think of if you've ever looked at MS build, like the build files that are used for C Sharp, they have different build configurations kind of built in there for like prod, debug, tracing, and it all gets basically stitched together from a root build project definition, so that when you load up, like your IDE, you're loading up like a root project definition. So it's like a single root file that then links off to these other sub files that have more specific configurations. And I like this approach because I like having a single root file that is consistent among all Polywrap projects. And I think that this just makes building tooling on top of Polywrap easier. You can imagine that if we maybe built some interface to do things with the Polywrap project, you would just have to give that interface like a single root project definition file. So yeah, that's kind of my little rant. I really like having a single consistent root file that then has sub files that have different configurations.
Interesting. I also come from C sharp, and I kind of not a huge fan of the way that's done, but it's been a while, so I kind of
Yeah, and it's
don't remember everything. I remember it being a bit hard to work around the different local environments, debug, for instance, and such.
yeah, and it's also this way with other tooling. So like if you think of Docker, like there's like a single root Docker file. If you think of let's say game engines, there's a single root project file. If you think of let's see, yeah, like any like IDE project for developer tooling, I feel like a lot of them just work off of a single root project file. Make is another example. Make files. CMake. Yeah. I digress. But yeah, definitely an option to move in this route. Okay. And any other points of feedback?
I have a question, but it's a dumb question, and yeah, it's related to manifest. I was wondering what's the reason to have a manifest for applications.
The reason for having okay. For applications, we use this to do code gen, and so currently, like you define your imports inside of a schema for an app, and then you run the code gen command, and it'll generate typings for your app. So you would say my app uses Uniswap, and it uses IPFS and Ethereum, and you would import all of those in your schema, and then you would run Polywrap CodeGen, and it would generate all of the typings for those for your app to use.
Okay, I don't know. I find it weird, to be honest. I
Yep,
think,
definitely.
yeah, I think that the end user should just import the client and like do the invocations, but that's not a topic for this um call. But yeah, I just really yesterday when I was like updating the binding of the application, I really found it weird because I think that it makes sense for plugins, for wrappers, sorry, and interfaces, but the application developer should not be aware of any like schema or yeah, I don't know. That yeah, those are my two cents.
I believe that in the future we will have smarter introspection, and we might be able to generate at least partially the types for that without that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that helps here is if we add a better workflow around adding dependencies. You won't have to have this kind of awkward thing where like your application has a schema. But maybe instead you just define like a polywrap.deps file or something, and you list all your dependencies there. And so you wouldn't need this like project file, and you could just maybe code gen off of that. But like from like a CLI perspective, an application is its own project type. So and we have supported extensions for for the application project type. We have the CodeGen extension to generate the bindings. We have the infra if you want to stand up different pieces of infrastructure. So from that perspective, I think it is worthwhile to have like a separate application project type because we have CLI commands that work specifically on applications. Yep.
I'm like I agree that like using the client and just invoking methods does make more sense um, than than like the like modules that we're creating. But the other types, so say you have a method that's returning some complex type, like in Uniswap, you might have something that returns a trade, or maybe you're using the Ethereum plugin and you get back like a transaction receipt or whatever. Um, it is really helpful to be able to generate types for those, like for the objects.
You got me there. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest part is the input arguments and the resulting data like that you get back. Because yeah, if you don't have that, then you're coding blind with any types, or you're just manually defining types yourself. But those can fall out of sync from the schema very easily. So having the code gen build step allows you to be type safe when you're coding against a wrapper.
Perfect. Okay, I don't have any more. Yeah, you got me. Thanks for pointing that out, Chris.
Even for invoking methods directly is nice. Yes, in certain situations. For example, the Polywrap client is really similar to an HTTP client, and in a lot of projects that I've worked on in the past, and in the last project I worked on, I had to implement this myself. The way we approach the front end and back end development, where on the front end you are calling some API service on the back end, is that it's really a manual way that most people do it. Is you just calling the route. On the front end you say http.get and then pass in the route plus some base URL. But the problem is that it's magic strings. You gotta maintain the endpoints. So a next step in refactoring is transferring all of those routes to a single file where they're typed, so that you can refer to them as constants, as variables. So no more magic strings. But even that is awkward writing HTTP GET, especially when you have things like modules. So either arguments or return types. So usually you create models that are the same on the back end and on the front end. So you basically have, if you're writing backend in C#, you have models in C#, and on the front end I don't have TypeScript, you have models in TypeScript. Same object, just different language, different place. And what you end up doing is creating a service, let's say call it account service, that's nothing more than a wrapper around the endpoints. So you could have like a get users function on that service, and all it does is call http.get, on the base URL/users. And that's super annoying and a manual way of doing things. And what we ended up doing is just having codegen. So on the back end, you could code for your, as you call it, the controller, your list of endpoints. You just run codegen, and it generates the front end code for that service, basically. So it's really similar to our current codegen, except you don't have the concept of passing in the client. So it's similar to how our codegen would look like in our next step. And developers really like that because they don't have to do a lot of grunt work and constantly writing boilerplate. So that's why in most cases you would not want to invoke methods directly on a client. A large rant, but I had to write the tooling around this, so I know the pain points.
I think that also our Polywrap client is a bit similar in some ways to Apollo client, and Apollo 3 basically what it does is you declare your schema on the client side, and that's a schema that Apollo is going to use for the queries and to sanitize your queries. And the Apollo package comes with a codegen command, just like we do, and it parses the client-side schema, and it generates type bindings for you so that you don't have to do your typings manually. So I don't think that this is an outlandish pattern or at all.
Okay, sweet. So since we have 4 minutes left, and any last concerns or thoughts on this refactor? And if not, we can kind of call this like agreed upon and move it into the roadmap planning. Any last thoughts? Feel free to be contrary.
No, I think this looks perfect, and yeah, I think I have like mentioned this before, but yeah, not sure. Basically, in the extensions, yeah, do we like want to support only files there, or like do we want the user to be able to input like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can definitely I'll add that to future editions. We can different extension manifests, and then also we can just have inline extensions. So we can just have Yep. So yeah, that's definitely something. And then we would also have obviously like the format again. Okay. Cool. Any last thoughts? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Thank you for all the thoughts so far. Cool.
Still not completely sold on the debug and prod, but not sold. So I'll think about
Yeah,
it.
it's something that's in like the future edition. So it's something
Oh,
that,
okay.
not a part of this base one.
For sure. Could we though have a? Okay, maybe not necessary for right now, but it'd be nice to have just a manifest option if we don't already have in the CLI. Specify the manifest either path or file name.
A manifest option in the CLI. And
Yeah,
what would that
so
look like?
polywrap build dash dash manifest polywrap.prod, yeah, or src slash polywrap, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we have that for all the commands. Yep. You can pass in
Okay,
a
awesome.
path. All right, sweet.
Sweet.
Well, thanks so much, everyone. This was great. Yeah. So it looks like. Yeah. Okay.
Just a couple of maybe logistical questions
Oh, go ahead, Eugene.
before we close it up.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so we have the URI resolution workshop scheduled for Friday. Do we also want to schedule something for the data translation standard, or do we want to push that out a week?
And maybe take one of the feature workshops if we want to prioritize that higher the data translation standard for this Thursday.
Would it make sense to have the final review of invocation standard on Friday?
Actually, that would be during our regular technical console standards feature meeting next week.
Okay.
And for the Friday, we'd want to just focus on the workshops and then accept team members present.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
So for this Friday, we already have one block allocated. So it's a 2-hour block. We have one block allocated to the URI standards. But for the second block, we can either schedule the data translation, which was already something that we want to schedule, or if we want to prioritize a feature, any of the features that we discussed today, if you want to take up with that block this Friday for that, that's also an option.
Yeah, so I guess that I can come up with a first iteration of the post-origin schema build artifact, where basically I can outline all the changes and things that I have done in the current thing I'm working. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, but I feel like we could still make progress on the data translation standard. Yeah, like what's the status there? It still needs more work, right?
Yeah, we think it's going to be one more workshop remaining before it's going to be ready for feedback session.
Most likely, yeah. If nothing
Okay, then let's do it.
changes.
Yeah. I think the current plan looks fine.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
God bless, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.